And we saw how he used Cyrus to send all of the Jews back to build the temple. Cyrus didn't know God or love God. He was just stirred in his heart by God to let those people go back, and they went back. So God can use anyone, good or bad, right or wrong, to accomplish his will, because he's that sovereign, he's that powerful. He has mercy on whomever he wills, and he hardens whomever he wills. So he can use anyone. It's not like there's really a choice of whether or not you're going to fulfill God's will. It's more of a response to where you're going to spend eternity and who you're going to live for. Because everyone, like Pharaoh, is going to fulfill God's will. And did Pharaoh fulfill God's will as God was trying to use it through Moses? Absolutely he did. He was used to set the Hebrews free, as well as Moses. So you can look at all the earth and go, man, this world is crazy. I can't watch the news for 2 minutes until I'm praying out loud. It's insane. And you just wonder how all of these things are going to work out. And you have to remember that God is still on the throne, that he is sovereign, and that he will take and use all of these things for his good will in order to make it come about. Bad and good and all of these things working and moving. And that's what I love. I love that he's like, I'll have mercy on whom I have mercy, have compassion on whom I have compassion. We probably understand this really better than we understand or realize it, because we just kind of came out of the Christmas season, right? So you bought gifts for who you decided to buy gifts, and you didn't buy gifts for who you decided not to buy gifts for, right? Some kids got different things. Some kids didn't get stuff. You understand what it is to be compassionate. You understand to be like, look, they were kind of a jerk this year. They're going to get less. You know what it is to decide that. You've worked at jobs where the HR manual's been like, look, you do this, you get fired. You do this, you're going to do well. And you've had to put the hammer down, whether it's in school and teaching or working or hanging out with friends. There are consequences to decisions. And God can use all of that because he's all-knowing, all-powerful. And he's everywhere for his good to accomplish his will, which is what? To show mercy, to show compassion, and to extend that out to others. And so God's like, look, I'm going to take this sovereignty and I'm going to work and I'm going to use it in a huge, mighty way. So God is eternal and he justly gives mercy to those that he wants to. And why does he do this? So that his name and his power is proclaimed throughout all of the earth. So he raises up Pharaoh. So Pharaoh thinks he's just ascending to the throne of Egypt because he was born into this eternal right and he's just better than all the other gods out there. And God's like, no, I'm raising you up because I'm going to use you to accomplish my will so those people, my people can be set free, eventually find their way into the promised land, and all of that rolls forward. So God can literally use anyone that he desires to accomplish his will, whether they believe in him or not. Whether they believe in him or not. Let's look at verses 21 through 24. I think this is an incredible piece to help us kind of wrestle with why there's such, why do bad things happen to good people and why are there just hard things in life when it comes to God's sovereignty? Because if he's sovereign, why doesn't he just make it awesome? Why isn't it just heaven now, right? Why can't it just be heaven now? Why can't he just make everything perfect? Can it just be Disneyland all the time? Well, this verse tells us why right here, these verses. Look at verse 21. It's crazy what in his sovereignty he endures. Just talking in chapter 9, has the potter no right over the clay to make out of that same lump one vessel for honorable use and another for dishonorable use? The answer is yes, he does have that right. What was it? 6th grade art class, we were given a project to do just this. Our art teacher said, here's a rectangle of clay. Make something that you can put into the kiln and glaze and then take home to your family, right? That's what we're going to need you to do. So I took the clay in an attempt and I said, well, what do I need to do, teacher? What do you want me to do? You can do whatever you want. And I was like, awesome. So I made just the most hideous, nastiest little pot you'd ever seen with a lid that goes on top of it. And my mom in her graciousness was like, it's so incredible. We love it. And she actually used it for many, many, many years. But it was hideous. It was terrible. I am not a clayman. I cannot make things that people would want to use out of clay, except maybe to hold the trash bag down in the can. So I was like, look, here's the deal. But the teacher was right. You can make whatever you want. And the goal was just to accomplish and just to make it. And some people made other awesome things. Some people made ashtrays for their dads. Other people made like little clay cup holders. I mean, just all kinds of different stuff that they made. But the potter gets to choose. The potter gets to determine. Verse 22. Verse 22. Now what if God, desiring to show his wrath and to make known his power, has endured with much patience vessels of wrath prepared for destruction, in order to make known the riches of his glory for vessels of mercy, which he has prepared beforehand for glory, even us whom he has called, not only from the Jews, but also from the Gentiles. Now, what you're seeing here in this verse, when we're talking about God's sovereignty, is that God is creator. That's the potter reference, right? He created everything, right? He knit you together. The scripture tells us. He's also Savior. He's sustainer of all. He endures patiently those deserving wrath, so that those who will be saved by grace through faith from sin will bring him praise and credit and be with him forever. So you look at this and go, why doesn't he just make it boom now, right? It's the tension of how you want Christ to come and you want him to return, but also you're kind of like, not yet, Lord. Why is that? Because there are still family members that I have that don't love Jesus and they aren't saved. And when Christ comes, they're done. They're not going to heaven. They're going to hell. And if Christ returns and if this is all over, then they've got no more chance and no more hope because they've lived in rejection to him. But as long as Christ tarries, there's this age of grace, this age of the church where he can grow. So what you're seeing in this passage of verses, which is so crazy that God does with his sovereignty, because most people think when they have sovereignty, I'm just going to exert it for everything and everyone to do what I want and to get my way. But here's what God does. God still creates people and makes people even though he knows that they're going to grow up and reject him their entire life. And why isn't he just shooting fire bolts out of his fingers? You don't love me. Boom. You skip a church, all that. Boom. You making fun of. Boom. You're doing this. Boom. Why isn't he just killing people and wrathing all the time? Because he's enduring that so that those of his mercy, the children of God, those who are Christians might be able to experience his mercy and then ultimately experience his glory and then live with him forever. So you know what? He goes, look, I'm going to put up with the weeds that are going to grow up in the crops so that when I harvest the crops, there'll be good fruit that comes from that. Right? Now, one day he is going to come and he's going to sort it out. You can read the book of Revelations and you can see all of that. The weed and the chaff are going to get separated. That's going to be cast in the fire. You know, the weeds are going to be over here. The good harvest and the plants are there. The goats and the sheep. It's all there. It's all there. But God's so sovereign that he's enduring patiently all the dishonorable and all the bad things. I don't know if we think about God's sovereignty like that enough, because when man gets sovereignty, we manipulate and change things so we can continue to maintain that power, to maintain those restrictions on people their entire life so I don't have to give away power. But God is doing the opposite. It's the way the kingdom works. He's enduring these people in this hardship so that you might be saved. And if you are saved, that you might endure his compassion and understand his mercy and be able to receive that. And that really just brings a huge perspective and just a loving moment on God's sovereignty. To think that he's on the throne. He even let his son go through all that Jesus went through. So that what? You might be saved and you might live for him all the days of your life. That's true sovereignty. To go, even though they break law, I'm not just going to wipe them all out. Even though there's a place I'm going to endure. So he does. He sits up there and people mock him and make fun of him and say that he's not real and say that he doesn't love people. So why does God endure dishonorable things? So that those who have received his mercy will experience his glory as well. So that you might not only know him in heaven, but you may know him now. So he endures all of those things that don't. Because think about it, if you're sovereign God and the best that our mind can do, and you've created everything, you've named every star, every grain of sand you know, every bird's feather that falls, every hair on your head is due, and you're like, I'm going to endure all of these so that those who will become saved will endure. I mean, that's a huge amount of love being expressed and a huge amount of restraint of power to not just be like, okay, all right, I'm sick of these people. It's over. Boom. But he doesn't. He endures and he endures so that you might receive his mercy and experience his glory. And I think that that's an incredibleness of sovereignty. And when you think about those things, about why am I making decisions and why am I doing certain things, God's sovereignty over everything is a supreme power. We know that we exist to bring God glory and to make disciples. And if we know we exist to do that, which is what he even said for Pharaoh, he used Pharaoh to what in verse 17? So that his name and power would be proclaimed upon all the earth. Man, he used someone like Pharaoh to do that. So let's talk about us. How can we, based on this message, do more to become like Christ and embody God's sovereignty where we are? Let's just talk about our worship for a second. So we talk about our worship. Be in glad submission to God's sovereignty. Follow his lead to fulfill his will. So when you're looking at your worship, which is offering your body as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing unto the Lord, then in glad submission, you come to God's sovereignty, that you follow his lead to fulfill his will. That's the deal. So that's how you can worship out so good and so true, in glad submission. Not unglad forcefulness, but in glad submission, and know that he's enduring so that you might be saved and expect what he is. What about out in a community? How can we express God's sovereignty out there? God's way every day. You've got to figure out how to be a Christian more at your job, more in worship, more where you live, more when you do things, more and more do life the way God directs. How does God want you to accomplish this task at work? How does he want you to strengthen your relationships? And has he told you in scriptures to do that? How does he want you to enjoy life and rest and recharge in a way that brings him glory and that shows that he's in control? And talk about that and tell that and show that to other people. So it's God's way every day. And you just try to do that more and more and more and more. Remember what we talked about the last message? It isn't our way to his narrow way, which is Jesus. It's his way to his narrow way. We do what God wants us to do in the way that he puts it. So when you're out in a community, that's going to make a huge difference, right? In the world, but not of the world. When we talk about service, how can you serve others in response to God's sovereignty? Respond to others so that it draws them closer to God. Show them how God leads you. So I just encourage you, be like, look, this is how we make choices. This is how we do it. And you just kind of repeat that over. Respond to others, respond to others, respond to others. It draws them closer to God to show them how God leads you. And that's what we see in these scriptures, right? These vessels of mercy, these riches of his glory, these vessels for honorable and dishonorable use. You go out there and you show, and you're like, look, I know God's got to have compassion on who he has to, which I think is great, right? God has compassion on who he decides to do, which means it's not on your human exertion or your good works or your goodwill, but how God decides it. Remember the parable of the story that Jesus told of the day workers that came, and they found some in the morning, and they came and worked, and then he went all throughout the day to find them, and they went to the guys that started early, or the guys that started late in the day, and they paid them a full day's wages, and the guys that started working in the morning, who'd worked all day, thought, well, if they're getting a full day's wage, we're going to get a ton more money. And they all got the same, because God's showing this just equalness, and he's showing this kindness and this love, and that he gets to decide and pick out what is the best for him. So I would say to you, respond to others so that it draws them closer to God and shows them how God's leads you. And then in order to multiply God's sovereignty, I would say this, make it plain to all that God is still on the throne. When more variants come out, when fear persuades all of the news, when things seem like they're getting worse, when politicians won't let go of their power because they love it too much, when Christians hide because they're afraid of what someone may say to them where they work, worship, and live and play, you remind people that God is still on the throne, and no matter what happens, remind others who's in control, that God is. Whom shall you fear if God is your king? Who shall you worry about if he's sovereign over everything? Nothing and no one. Because what can separate you from the love of Christ in love of God in Christ Jesus? Nothing can. Nothing can. So I would encourage you to just continue to live in such a way that God is still on the throne, that he is sovereign, and know that this is true. This isn't a debate. There is no determining what needs to happen or needs to take place, or there's some other team, or if God's only sovereign over all the Christians. That's not true. You can read in Scripture, and the only time the devil ever gets to do anything in the Bible is because God says he can. That's crazy sovereignty. The only reason the devil can do anything is because God gives him permission to allow that to go. God's still on the throne. He's in control of everything. So here's